Welcome to The Otherworlds, where we talk to authors of fantasy, supernatural, and paranormal stories. Let's open the portal and meet our guest. Good morning. My name is Sandra Ruttan, and I am here today with Sarah Maria Griffin. And you are the author of Spare and Found Parts, Other Words for Smoke, The Book of Wisdom. You've written a book of poetry and flash prose called Follies, and you also have a memoir called Not Lost. And now you have your latest book, Eat the Ones You Love, coming out, I think, next week, right? As of when we're talking. So welcome to the podcast and thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted, Sandra. Great to have a chat.
Yeah. Now, this book, it sounds like it was quite an ordeal because it took you about 5 years to write.
It did. Yeah. So I started this book after wholeheartedly quitting writing in late 2019. I experienced a very profound burnout and couldn't access the part of my brain anymore that wanted to make things up. So I retrained as a florist. And I took these three very immersive, practical courses in a small room, a small, very cold room in Dublin, um, and learned the insides and outsides of the business and the practical end of flower arranging, which is quite difficult. It's very important to be bad at something sometimes, I think. And by the time I qualified, the month was March and the year was 2020. So, as I think you probably remember, things changed quite seriously, quite quickly for all of us. So, there was never going to be any internship at the flower shop. There was never going to be any progress. So, along the way, I found myself thinking of a story, and I wrote it between then and 2021, actually. But the nature of publishing and the nature of the grand machine of the industry that it is, it took until this year for it to meet the pages. It was actually sold in a two-book deal with another book that is coming out next year, and the other book was the one that was written first. I wrote it in 2017, would you believe? So I think for many writers, the order in which things are written does not necessarily equate the order in which they meet the public. So definitely the whole process took 5 years, but in that 5 years, I also wrote two other books. So I'm always writing, always bubbling, but the machine and the industry had slightly different plans for me. But I'm so excited that it's out now. It's been a long road.
Well, it must have been a wild ride because, like, you
Yeah.
decide that you're going to move away from writing, you decide to take this
Mm.
training, and then the universe happens.
The universe
And
happens. You're always going to find yourself writing. You think to yourself, I'm done, I'm finished. I was quite unwell. So I think I had to take a step back. And in that step back, I reevaluated what was important to me about the work that I was doing, what was important about my aesthetic, why I was writing. I'd never really stopped to question why I was writing at all. I just did it. It was just something I always did, even as a child. So it was definitely a sort of a portal that I passed through in my early 30s. And I'm very happy to be on the other side of it now.
now, where did the idea for the sentient plant come from?
So, the narrator of this novel, his name is Baby, and he's an orchid. And he is part of, I guess, a wider pantheon, is what I would say, of monsters in the work that I produce. In Other Words for Smoke, the monster was called Sweet James, and he was an owl. And I loved writing him, and he's a figure and a character that I feel like I mentally return to often. And in the work that I've produced since then, I wanted to explore more of monstrosity, right? More monsters. And in this case, I'm not really sure how it happened, but I wanted to land the reader uncomfortably close to the malevolence, like the dark heart. So instead of looking at the dark heart through a hero or a protagonist's eyes, I wanted them to come up real close and real personal with the badness, you know? Um, so I write about monsters all the time, and Baby was so much fun. He was so much fun to write. I loved inhabiting him and being inhabited by him.
Well, he's an intriguing character, and I found myself just sort of mesmerized because, on the one hand, plants are supposed to be something people think good of, like
Mm,
that we like, that we enjoy. I mean, personally speaking, I have a certified death thumb. I can kill any plant. I
the
mean,
Black Thumb, yes.
my mother, on the other hand, can make anything come to life. And
Beautiful.
it really is. I am quite envious of that talent because it is a talent and it's also
Mm.
a value because I mean, plants just bring so much beauty and joy into the world. But then you have baby.
And we've got Baby. So something I learned along the way of becoming a technically certified but never practicing florist, I realized very sharply that when you're dealing in flowers, like a bouquet of flowers that you pick up at Trader Joe's or wherever, they're already dead. So the industry and the act of exchange or gifting or receiving flowers is already, they're already gone. They're just decaying very beautifully in front of you. And when we stick them in a vase of water and put the little thing of plant food in and hope for the best, we're just prolonging something that's already gone. They're gone from the minute they're cut. So that to me is absolutely fascinating that we're surrounded by them. Also, florists meet people at every moment, every big moment in their lives. They meet people at birth, they meet people at death. We recently lost our beloved 13-year-old cat, Big Mo. And when he died, I received all these flowers from my friends and was just so moved. So flowers met me when my baby was born. Flowers met me when my cat died. I live across the street from this huge cemetery, the biggest cemetery in Ireland, and it's just full of flowers that are already gone. And I think the act of dealing flowers is so interesting because you meet the guy who's buying flowers for his mistress, you meet the guy who's buying flowers for his wife, you meet someone, there's an intimacy in that. So certainly flowers are joyful, but they're also punctuation on life, you know? And what's more interesting about them as punctuation is that they're already dead. So I think there's macabre and there's gothic in them from their very nature, you know?
Well, I mean, and they're quite a symbol, really, if you think about it from that perspective, that
Mm,
they're already dead. And really, like, our society is so good at putting a pretty face on the things that are killing us in a way. Think
absolutely.
about
Yeah,
AI and the things that you could go on and talk about. So it's an interesting representation of sort of how we treat things in our lives, and what we
it
accept.
is.
We just dress up the stuff that is already gone, as you said. And I was
Hmm.
thinking about this reading the book because you actually kind of highlight that point that both hairdressers and florists meet people at all of these significant moments, and they can
Yeah,
include the good and the bad,
yeah,
getting ready for a funeral, getting ready for a wedding, you they touch on all of these really personal moments in people's
they
lives.
do.
And
Yeah.
and then I found myself wondering, so why did you throw a travel agent in the mix?
I think travel agent is the most glamorous job on the planet. I still do. So the shopping center that the novel is set in, the Woodbine Crown, is a sort of amalgam of a few spaces in my own life, in my own backdrop in Dublin, on the north side of Dublin specifically, which I'm aware might be kind of a very nuanced thing. But if anyone who's ever been to Dublin kind of probably understands there's a kind of a delineation between the south side and the north side of Dublin. And the travel agent that I'm speaking about in the novel, Beck, she's a fantastic character. I think she's sort of the secret heart of the novel is Beck. But I loved her. I loved writing her. She was so much fun. And the shop that she works in is one that exists. It's called Cassidy Travel. It is a real shop. It is a real chain that does exist. Sorry, Cassidy Travel. I don't say anything bad about them, I don't think. Um, but I think it's also a job that has been eaten by the internet, right? We all book our own flights. But yet, there are still these outposts in shopping centers where these fabulous women sit in little neck scarves and uniforms and will book your holiday for you. I think that is so glamorous. What a great job. You go in, you sit behind your computer, you meet people, you sort out their holidays for them. Like, now you do have to help them if their holidays go wrong, which is probably very difficult and requires a lot of emotional skill. But I think they're among that league of jobs, right? For me, florists, hairdressers. Um, these are like travel agent, unfortunately, is a job that has been eaten by the internet and has been eaten by tech and has been eaten by AI, certainly, but they still prevail. Hairdressers, you cannot AI a hairdresser. You cannot AI a florist. These are jobs people do with their hands. They're trades. They're often deeply feminized trades. And they're, to me, the jobs that people will be doing until the end of the world. Do you know?
Hmm.
Like even take for the pandemic, for example. The first thing that many people who weren't directly impacted by COVID within the lockdowns and who were just sort of existing in these liminal spaces of staying indoors in their house were concerned by was hairdressers. What are the hairdressers going to do? You know, like they're it's such an important part of the everyday that we live in. And the work itself is so intimate. You know, you let people touch, like these people touch your head. They make you look different. You let them put chemicals on you. You know, like if you kind of abstract it, it's a remarkable job. It's also something I would love to have been able to do myself. So I romanticize these jobs because they're jobs that pass me by. Um, on my road. Um, Ones that are definitely not closed off to me, which I would love to go back and to floristry or I would require a great deal of training, I think, to become a hairdresser. But yeah, the book is studded with these different kinds of trades and these different kind of work, you know, because because I think they're really, really special and really important.
Well, they are really interesting jobs, and it's interesting that you point all of this out because after the pandemic, like getting a haircut was one of the big things of being able
Oh
to
my God, do you
out, like,
remember?
yo,
Huge,
yeah,
huge. And like Eat the Ones You Love was actually originally set during the pandemic. So I believe in the advance copy, there is one uncut reference to the pandemic. And by the time that we did the two passes on the end, every single reference to COVID-19 is gone. But the book was very heartily set smack bang in the middle of 2021. So, and in Ireland, we were locked down for years. So it was a very, very different shopping centre than the one in the final draft. But I think the themes and emotional moments and there's a sort of a you can't quite erase or edit out the atmosphere of that time. And maybe that was part of the sort of cognitive process was the things I was thinking about, which was hairdressers and travel and all the things we couldn't have, you know?
oh yeah, and I mean, and it's interesting because I think that although it may be COVID inspired, you've hit on something that has been a reality, certainly in the U.S. for a while, which is
Mm,
um, the decay of malls. Malls.
yes.
Now I'm Canadian, my husband's American, so I don't understand this because I come from a cold country. We like our malls, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
and here it does get cold. So I still like malls, but the malls are dying. And
Yeah.
you've written this incredible dying mall
Yeah.
on its last legs. And it reminded me so much of a mall near us that eventually shut down. And there's something
So
so,
sad.
sort of sad about it because when I think about these things, when I think about flowers and when I think about hairdressers and when I think about malls, in a weird way, I find myself thinking about a sense of community because there's a connection. There's a huge
Mm,
connection in these places, and
mm.
and and it just feels like that's something that we're losing. And I don't know if
Yeah.
that was intentional when you were writing the book or if it was something on your mind or not. But like, that was something that I was definitely picking up when I was reading through it. That was that was speaking to me, the memory of all of these places and professions and connection points with people that we're losing.
So glad that that rang through it, because that is really, on one hand, it's very easy to say this is a book about a talking plant who eats people, but it's not. It is a book about community and friendship and the real world that we live in. Shell, the main character, one of the main characters, Shell, the top of the Matryoshka doll of main characters, Shell, um, she is like allergic to her phone, you know, and it's sort of a curse that she carries around with her throughout the novel, is this constant um interference from WhatsApp groups she doesn't want to be a part of. And the mall is the opposite of the iPhone. It is a place where you go and you are, instead of a place that you lend your brain to. And as somebody with a very young child, in the early months of my daughter's life, in the winter, I walked, like early weeks, I would say even, I limped my my recently C-sectioned body around a giant shopping centre in Dublin. Um, Not Dundrum, Liffey Valley, for those of you who might know. And it felt like practicing being alive, you know? These long corridors, these bright shops, these little food stands in the food court, accessible bathrooms. Um, and it let me watch people, and it let me experience the world in a way that felt quite safe and felt quite sheltered. And that was a really profound. I will always hold that as a very important moment in a shopping center in my life. But my own childhood, my own youth, my teenage years, going in and out of shopping centers were, it was just part of every day. And when my friends first had their children, meeting them in shopping centers was a very big part of my relationship with them as new mothers, because they were indoor spaces, they were functioning environments. There was always the bathroom, there was always somewhere to sit. They were very humanitarian. Yes, they're commercial spaces. Yes, they absolutely are. But they're also human spaces. And there is almost nothing human at all about the internet in the time that we live in now. Um, so I think they are very important and very useful and very humane environments. And I think that is probably why we don't see many of them anymore at all. Um, so I believe the American malls have always seemed very grand to me. I lived in San Francisco, so not a lot of malls in San Francisco too. Um, uh, Give or take, Westfield and Stone something. I've been to two in in that end of things, but I have also been to Florida a couple of times, and seeing their grand expansive malls, that was really something. They are kind of romantic spaces, I think, a little. They're huge, the American malls. The sense of scale is very romantic to me, but the decay is also quite tragic then. These huge empty cathedrals just standing around in the American suburbs with nothing in them. It's amazing, you know?
Yeah, it's amazing and it's tragic. I mean, there's just that combination. Like,
Yeah.
if you've ever been to, if you ever get the chance to go to the West Edmonton Mall, you would probably just, die and feel like
Where
you
is it?
haven't in Edmonton, Canada. It's
Oh, in Canada. Yeah.
the West Edmonton Mall has hotels inside of it, has swimming pools, has roller coasters, you name it. They understand that Edmonton gets cold in the winter, and they have
People need somewhere to go. Yeah.
and they have everything that you could possibly want. I mean, people plan weekend getaways to the West Edmonton Mall, but there's so much to do.
That is so cool. I would be so down for it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that we just, it does seem like something we've lost down on. My husband and I have both worked with adults with disabilities, and
Mm.
we, I mean, I don't anymore, but it used to be quite a thing of like going to the mall to mall walk because you can go to the mall and
Mm.
exercise before the stores are open by mall walking. And there's not just people with disabilities who do that, but there's a lot of people, health conscious people who choose to do that. And it's a safe indoor space where you can exercise. I mean, it's things like
Yeah.
this. And it's funny how we lose that. But your book made me think so much about that because I can't even. I was gonna say I can't remember the last time I've been in a mall. and that's
See,
quite
this is your call. This is your call to action. You gotta go, you know?
yeah, well, I have to find one that's still open around here and
Still open, yeah,
yeah,
true.
and that's yeah. So that's the thing. But it's interesting that you're talking about Shell and her allergy to her iPhone and the comparison between the people on WhatsApp and the people in the mall because I felt that with Jen and Shell, you gave us this really unflinching look at the challenges that people face um, entering adulthood and moving on through adulthood, how hard it can be to move on from your formative years and from where you
Mm,
grew up, and how there are all these points of change in our lives. And people have these expectations, and then they have these judgments, and there's so much layered in that, and um, we get that through Jen's experiences and shells in different ways and looking kind of at both
yeah.
sides of the coin. And I thought it was just so fascinating. And I also kind of wondered, because I haven't read it, I wondered if it was a little inspired by your memoir, because you have your memoir Not Lost and you moved to San Francisco for a period of time. I just wonder
Yeah.
whether a lot of those experiences came from your own or if there were reasons why it was on your mind when you were writing the book.
Well, a little bit of it is yes. So Not Lost was like a collection of essays I wrote in my, oh my God, I was like 24. Yikes. During the great era of the personal essay, I wrote this collection of personal essays about my first year living in America. I lived there for 3 years, which it's a blink, but at the time it was forever. And it was very much about the experience. Like in 2012, more people left Ireland, like emigrated from Ireland than they did during the famine. So we are a country that continuously and aggressively exports our young people because there is very little opportunity here. And now the housing and the economy has become so difficult that young people are leaving in droves. Still, we haven't seen an age of prosperity in quite some time for young people. So, and obviously Irish people we have the tremendous passport that is whiteness, so we fit in just about anywhere, and we do and will fit in just about anywhere. So I'm part of the very long tradition of Irish people who moved to America to clean houses, and that is what that book is about. And I had a beautiful 3 years. I had an incredible time, and I was heartbroken to have to leave, but San Francisco is the most expensive city in the world, and economic pressure will move you just about anywhere. And I looked around me, and all my friends were leaving, and I felt the party ending, and we came home. So I found my people in San Francisco. So and I'm very lucky to be going on book tour there actually in May and returning to the bookstore that I worked in, if you can believe, the Booksmith on Haight Street. And so much of my joy of working in that bookstore is in this book. And finding your people and finding meaning in shop work and finding something more behind the counter than you ever could have expected. And sorry, oh my God, every time I think about it, I kind of well up. Oh my God, what am I like? Um, and so yeah, part of a lot of the joy of the social stuff, the happy social stuff, if you will, maybe Jen's connection to Beck and that is stolen from my life. But also the hard stuff and the moment where you realize maybe the people that you traveled through some chapters of your life with don't really want you to come into the next chapters. A lot of that is true of my own experience. I feel a bit like an alien, generally speaking, on planet Earth, and I imagined that that might stop in my 30s, but it sure didn't. So I definitely took a lot of my own trickiness uh, and put it in there and tried to solve the puzzle of a time in my life by writing it all down. But I also celebrate for sure some of the connections and friendships that I've made that have lasted and across continents. Um, in there as well. So Eat the Ones You Love is, like I said, a horror story about a plant, but it's also a horror story about people. And it's also a love story about a plant, but definitely a love story about people too. So yeah, there's a lot of me is in there.
Well, I there was a line on page 95. Jen says, "Making friends as an adult is brutal," and that really resonated with me.
It is brutal. It is. I also, by the way, don't class making friends in your 20s as making friends as an adult. I think making friends in your 20s is almost as easy as making friends when you're 5 years old. Now in your 30s, that's a very, very different set of equations altogether. So when you do, it is so powerful and so special and such a great treasure. Um, so like I said, I still have so many friends that I've stayed in touch with and held close to my heart from living in America, you know, 13 years ago. Like that's crazy, you know. So like anything, if you water it, it will grow. So somehow I've managed to maintain those blooms over all that time.
That is one of the things that the internet has made a little bit easier, I think.
Yes,
It,
definitely,
it is
definitely.
easier to stay in touch, although there is something to be said for the handwritten letter. You know, the
Big proponent of the handwritten letter. I make during the pandemic, I made a lot of zines, and I found myself with this strange tiny zine empire. So I'm a big believer in sending handwritten and handprinted things. I have a friend who I went to college with who lives in London who still sends me handwritten letters. I think they're the most, oh my God, they're the real essence of connection. I think.
yeah, they're very personal. It's a very personal touch. So, out of all of the characters in your
Mm.
book, which one is the one that you would become drinking buddies with?
Oh, that is such a good question. Jen, for sure. Jen is trouble. Jen is great fun. She's bold and she's weird and she's mean, you know. I think I could have a really, really good couple of pints with Jen. Potentially Daniel also, because Daniel is kind, maybe for opposite reasons than Jen. Daniel is warm and silly and wise, whereas Jen is kind of cute, do you know, and sharp. And I think both of them together now, that would be some night out. I'm not sure I could have a pint with Nev because I think I'd probably be trying to unpick the puzzle box of her too much. And Shell is definitely the kind of person who's liable to start crying. But Jen for sure and Daniel for sure.
Yeah, well, and I thought that those two were a lot of fun. Actually, also that Jen is quite brave and loyal in her own
Yeah.
way, and self-aware. I don't
Yeah.
want to give anything away on that, but
Jen's had a
like,
lot of therapy.
yeah, but
Jen is the only one in the novel with a therapist.
yeah, but like when I was reading it, it was like it wasn't like I didn't like the other chapters. I loved it. But whenever I got to a Jen chapter, I was like, oh goody,
Oh, I'm so glad.
more,
I'm
more.
so glad.
Yeah, I was just like, oh, more Jen self-awareness,
That's
because
great.
you knew what was coming, and yet you're living for it, like you just, so and also because I think that she had distance, she had the
Mm,
ability to take that step back and look at everything. When you're caught up in things and too close, it can be hard to see things clearly. And that seems to be what's happening with
yeah,
a lot of the rest of them because there are these little seeds of
yeah,
mystery and things are just not even occurring to people, you know?
yeah,
But Jen's
yeah,
got that mind. Jen's got
yeah,
a writer mind because she's thinking about everything.
yeah. Jen is a scientist, you know. Jen is somebody who will look at the facts, examine things closely. Um, she knows how to party, but she also knows how to think. My favorite thing about Jen is her tattoo. It is not a spoiler to say that Jen has the words Jolene, 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 Jolene tattooed around her leg, which if there's ever any selling point for a character, this is what I want to emphasize about Jen is that she's that kind of gal. So
Well, she's a wonderful character and I am
thank you. I'm so
very
glad you liked her. I love her. So I'm delighted to hear that you like her as well.
I liked all of the characters and I felt bad for them all in equal measure at different times,
Mm,
because it's a they're on the cusp of change, whether they've chosen it or not. And,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and that can be a very difficult time in a person's life. It can be exciting, but it can also be very difficult. And so it's very interesting to sort of see how that unfolded within the book. And of course, I don't want to give spoilers, so I'm gonna veer away from that. And now I did want to ask you about a few other things because you write about video games for The Guardian,
I
and
do.
I was curious about what is it about video games that appeals to you and whether or not you would ever consider writing one.
Oh, that's such a good question. And thank you for asking it. I love video games. Um, Video games are like if books are my wife, video games are my other wife. Sorry, not even my mistress. I love them. I love them as much as I love books, to be honest. I've been playing video games since I was 6 years old. And every year that becomes a more staggering distance. So I am, yes, a regular critic at The Guardian, which is still a job that I cannot believe that I get to do. Um, and I believe that I think they are both a toy and a text. And I think that they contain so much in that way that you can read them and you can play them. They have an incredible ability to transport you out of reality when they're good. Um, they're a constantly evolving medium. In the time the video games have kind of existed in the way that we know them, for example, say from Pong until today, is about the length of time from the first moving picture to Citizen Kane. So we have watched the entire evolution of a new medium of entertainment unfold before our eyes. And at this juncture in history, it should be evolving into this sort of pinnacle of expression or experiment or all of those things at once, you know? So yeah, huge enjoyer of video games, huge proponent of the medium, and will be forever. I would never write one because I do not know how. The writing of a video game is a very different technical act than the writing of a novel or a play or anything, any of the modes that I know. But also because I don't want to get too close. I want to enjoy, like, part of being a writer, and you know this, who also uh works in and around publishing and who knows kind of like how we go from farm to table, it kind of wrecks it a bit, right? You
Um,
know,
yeah.
it kind of wrecks the buzz. I love a little distance. I love opening up a video game and going, I have no idea how they did this. I haven't got a clue. What a marvel. Like animation. What a marvel. I do not know how they made this happen in front of me. I want to remain within my sense of awe and also within my critical faculties. You know, as a video game critic, I'm never going to be sitting here listing off specs to you. I am viewing the video game as though I am viewing a piece of cinema or a painting, always. And I need to remain at a distance. I also, like, if I get too close, like I can't turn everything into work. Technically it is work, but I know I would just obliterate myself for it, you know? Like I said at the very beginning of this conversation, I did burn out quite seriously, and I'm always trying not to do that again. So I will keep them as something that I take pleasure from, rather than getting too close to the nerve center.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough because we all need safe spaces in our lives where we can just relax and enjoy instead of having that
Oh my
part.
God, we all need pleasure.
Yeah,
Yes. Like,
yeah.
thank God for it. I love my job. I think I'm the best job in the world. But I also love playing video games. Do you know? Like enjoying myself. Because I don't think there's any point otherwise. You know? I wouldn't say I'm a hedonist, but I do think it's important to have places where you can play, you know?
I mean, if we don't enjoy life, what is the point? I mean,
Mm,
and that's, yeah.
absolutely.
And it's something that's easy to lose sight of when everything becomes work. So,
Yes, and I will turn if I am let, I will turn everything into work. So, and like I say this, and I am also a person who does write about video games for a job, but there's a kind of a distance as well. I don't write about every video game that I cover. I don't do it all the time. I do, one a month or so. It's something that I did think about breaking my neck into at a certain point, but the industry uh, around video game journalism has changed and is changing. There aren't as many outlets anymore. AI sure did do a number on a lot of our big platforms for video game writing. So it's something that I keep as a great pleasure in my life. And while there are aspects, like I'm reviewing a video game at the moment, do I have time to play it? No. But does my daughter sleep 4 hours during the day for her naps? Yes. So she can sleep on my lap and I will play video games over her sleeping body. Absolutely. Technically I will be getting paid to do that, kind of. But there's so much pleasure in it.
Well, and it's interesting you focus on the experience of it rather than the technical
Mm,
specs because
yeah.
this is what AI can never replicate is the human
Oh, never,
experience that we have.
never.
And
No,
and the way that books speak to us, the way that video games can speak to us, the way music and movies, all of these art forms, they will always be hollow if they're coming from machines because they can never really get to that connection.
exactly.
Like, it's like when I was reading this and I felt like, oh, this is somebody who understands what it's like to have changes in friend relationships as they get older and as the situations in their life change. Because every time that you're that things change in your life, whether you move or whether you get married or whether you get divorced or have a child, all of these things, these are all defining moments when your friend group can grow or can disappear. And I could see that reading through it. You feel like I have a connection with this author. They understand something that I've experienced. So,
I'm so
machine.
glad. Thank you for saying that. That's really kind. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate. I love a book that really makes me think. I mean, I enjoy all sorts of books. I love everything. I love to be
Same.
entertained. This is a book that,
Hmm.
on the one hand, baby is just a delicious villain. On the other hand, this book made me stop and think about a lot of different things. So it was something that I really appreciated because there was a lot in it that resonated with me. And on a side note, I noticed that you had talked once about the importance of empathy on social media. And I was really interested in watching that video, and it wasn't
Oh,
available.
wow, that's such an. Do you know that was recorded the day Brexit went through? My God, what a morning was that? I know exactly the one you're talking about.
Oh, wow. That's quite a day for that to have come out.
That was a crazy morning, I will tell you. Looking out over my audience, speaking about a serious topic and something I would never talk about today, um, and everyone's looking at their phones and me going, hold on, wait a minute. The polls are closed. Like very, very strange moment.
Yeah, no, those are defining moments in time. And particularly, if you lived in Europe, it- you know, that had a very big impact on people, you know,
Oh
in
yeah.
the UK and outside the UK. And so, but I was curious about you talking about the importance of empathy. And what do you think is the one thing that we could all do to make social media a healthier space?
Oh my God, that's a great question.
It might be impossible, though, I
I
fear.
would say maybe change what you consume.
Hmm.
I would say something that I am reminded of all the time is Facebook had this little orange book at the start of their empire, which explained what Facebook was. I haven't used Facebook since 2015. But I actually am like like I haven't had a drink in 100 days, but I've been off Facebook for a long time. But I found Facebook a very difficult place when it first arrived. I don't know. I find social media compelling and difficult and exciting and um, something in the little orange book that I remember reading. One of the statements was that Facebook is a chair, which is that the implication was that Facebook is a household object. And two is that you choose every follow yourself. You choose every interaction yourself. So if you widen the scope of who you are listening to, if you listen to people different from you, from different backgrounds, from different life experiences, you might find yourself learning and warming more especially to marginalized. I think what I'm actually more specifically talking about is marginalized communities. I'm not like, and you should definitely follow like Joe Rogan. He needs to be listened to. I'm more speaking about people whose life experiences are authentically and totally different to yours. And that might bring you closer to like a kind of a humane social media. I try to use it as a space for listening. When I do make posts, and I am a poster for my sins, I do like to say stupid things into the internet. And I like to play with the internet. I try to treat it as a video game. I was on Twitter for 14 years. And like I said, I've gone off there for quite a while now too. But I try to engage with it as a means of play, rather than anything profound or personal. I try to look at it as a game, in my own posting. But when I'm reading, I try to listen to trans voices. I try to listen to people of color. I try to make sure I'm following Indigenous people from different countries, not just Irish, not just the traveling community, not just the Aboriginal community, like just looking around and making sure that I have this opportunity to listen to people from every corner of the world. So why haven't I listening? You know? Like you can, oh my God, there's so much you can learn about people who are so unlike you and whose experiences, and then therefore who are completely like you. Do you know what I mean? Whose life experiences have brought them on a different path. And you get the privilege of this window into their experience. So why wouldn't you be curious? So I think maybe the very distilled version of this is be curious about people, use it as a place to listen, is what I would say.
Oh, I think that's fantastic advice because that's what you get when you travel too. You get the opportunity to
Yes.
experience different cultures, different ways of life, and learn from it. And that's,
Yes.
I mean, that's what I love most about travel, but not to sideline into that.
We could talk about, I tell you, we could talk about it for years.
Yeah, exactly. Now, to wrap things up, you did an interview in New World Order in 2022. And at the time, you said, "For now, I am living happily with the secret. How rare to get to keep a good secret, you know." And I
Oh.
do think that that quote kind of hits a little in an interesting way after finishing Eat the Ones You Love, because
Mm.
there's certainly a currency of secrets in that book. But I was wondering, what secrets are you keeping right now? What secret can you share with us?
A secret I can tell you is that I am 5,000 words off of finishing a new novel. And the other secret that I can tell you is that immediately after finishing that, I'm entering rewrites on my book for next year, which I am terrified of and very excited by. And that will be my longest novel yet.
Oh,
So,
wow.
those are two very nice secrets that I think I can tell you,
Those are
right
wonderful
now.
secrets. That's very exciting. I think
Thank you. It is exciting.
oh,
I can't wait to finish this book I'm writing. I've been writing it for like a year, and that's not very long for me. But I'm writing it literally while my child is asleep on me, or in these stolen moments. I'm writing it in pixels, individual pixels. So who knows if it's going to be any good? But I had the fortune of being funded by the Arts Council for it. Last year, I won a bursary to finish it, so I have a very strong sense of duty about finishing this novel and finishing it no matter what. So we're very nearly there. We're very nearly there.
well, that's very exciting. And so your book is coming out April 22nd, I believe.
In North America, yes, and in Ireland and the UK on June 3rd.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Mhm.
So you've got tours coming up in the United
I do.
States,
I
and
do, yes.
yeah, that's exciting.
Culture Ireland, with the Irish body for arts tourism, have funded me to go across America and tour. My wonderful publisher in the US, I've collaborated with Culture Ireland, and I'm going to be in San Francisco, Portland, Bloomington, Indiana, Charlotte, North Carolina, um, New York, and Boston. So I'm so excited. I'm between May the 5th and May the 15th, I'm on the road. I'm very excited.
That's fantastic. Well, I hope that people get an opportunity to come in and see you. I hope that people pick up your book next week and
Oh, thank
experience
you.
it and enjoy it. And I thank you so much for taking the time to chat today.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for such wonderful questions. It's been a great chat.